Well, a bold and controversial ruling in Colorado is generating questions across the country. Should Donald Trump be allowed to be on the 2024 presidential ballot? Colorado Supreme Court said no to that question when it comes to their state primary, citing a section of the U.S. Constitution, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Justices overturned a lower court ruling which said Trump participated in the January 6th insurrection, but could not be barred from the ballot. So now he is, at least for the time being. So what would a ruling like this mean for his part in Idaho politics, or for the rest of the country for that matter? Joe Paris spoke with a Boise State politics professor to find out.
A major move in Colorado. The state Supreme Court there ruled that former President Donald Trump is disqualified from the 2024 presidential ballot for his actions as a part of the January 6th insurrection. Experts across the country agree. The ruling will certainly be appealed to the highest court.
What constitutional scholars think is likely to happen is that the Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in one way or another on this. Otherwise, you're going to have sort of a mishmash of different states, adjudicating different disputes.
Dr. Charlie Hunt is a politics expert at Boise State, researching Congress and the presidency. He agrees this is a major move, but questions where it'll go.
I'm dubious about whether or not, number one, the Supreme Court is going to go along with this, and number two, whether this could really happen in a bunch of other states in such a way that's going to have a major impact on the election.
Colorado is not the first state to take on the legal question about Donald Trump. Idaho actually had a similar case filed in September by a Republican presidential candidate named John Castro. Mr. Castro filed suits in a collection of states trying to get Trump removed from the ballot. The Idaho case, though, was dismissed by Castro back on October 3rd, before any real action could go on with the case. We reached out to Castro for his reason why, but no response right away. Likely related, though, to Idaho moving to a presidential caucus. The Colorado decision, though, may open the door for more suits.
Certainly in all 50 states, no matter how red or how blue, you're going to have folks on either side sort of ready to pounce on potential opportunities like this.
Dr. Hunt touches on a major hypothetical. Will solid conservative states like Idaho try to send a message by attempting to remove Joe Biden from ballots, similar to the impeachment action in recent years?
Donald Trump was impeached twice for two different kinds of offenses. And, Joe Biden is under this impeachment inquiry now in the House of Representatives for a very different set of alleged offenses. And the concern then becomes, well, just every president's going to get impeached by the opposing party. And this is just a new tool in the toolbox.
This positions the United States Supreme Court to weigh in on a heavily political question. That is something that Dr. Hunt explains they're wary to do.
The court doesn't want to be seen as just another political body like Congress or like the presidency. In order for them to have power and have legitimacy, they need to kind of be above that. And so they don't generally like weighing in on stuff like this. And so that's part of why I'm skeptical that they're going to come down with some monumental ruling, right, that Trump can't be on the ballot in any state and is disqualified as president.
So how does this all impact Idaho?
I think probably not a ton of impact on Idaho for now, but in terms of being kind of the starting gun for this legal decision that is probably going to come from the Supreme Court in the coming weeks, it will have some bearing in terms of whether or not other folks can pursue a similar route of disqualifying President Trump here in Idaho or in other states.
So in Colorado, their decision is stayed or paused until January 4th, so a few weeks, because the state of Colorado, they print their ballots coming up on the 5th of January. So this is going to be a moving target to kind of track, Brian. The Supreme Court may be forced to rule on it. It is interesting to note that with the 2020 election fraud claims, basically Supreme Court said, here, take it back. The states need to figure this out, like what we saw in Arizona, what we saw in Florida. So it'll be interesting that they tried to stay out of that. They didn't want to decide the election. This one, though, they may be forced to weigh in.
Oh, yeah, and whatever they decide, they're going to get it from both sides. Either they're in the bag with the former President Trump, or they're opposed to him being anywhere near that office. So.
It is also interesting in Colorado that you have a 5-4 decision, and I know that it's being characterized as all the liberal judges. Well, all of the judges on the Colorado Supreme Court were put there by Democrats, but it is still a 5-4 split decision. So kind of gives an insight into how closely debated this issue is going to be across the country.
All right, well, sticking with Idaho, Donald Trump was the first to file to be part of Idaho's Republican process to pick a presidential candidate, which will be a caucus. It's a list he will likely remain on, but as you can imagine, Idaho's grand old party had some grandstanding to do. After yesterday's ruling, Chairman Dorothy Moon putting out a statement this morning calling the decision by Colorado Supreme Court an unprecedented and alarming scenario in our nation, a leftist move, she wrote, that directly interferes in the electoral process and exposes potentially deep flaws in party nominations being administered by the state. But that wasn't all, Chair Moon wrote, using this moment to call attention to a partisan shift in Colorado politics and how that is where Idaho is headed if a certain initiative is allowed to go forward. Not too long ago, Colorado resembled Idaho in its conservative majority, she said, but in less than a generation, it has shifted towards resembling California and other blue states. Colorado has fallen to the left since the introduction of ranked choice voting in the state. And aside from the buzzword California, it was that last sentence that caught our eye. Because as you know, there is a petition being circulated in Idaho that would open up primary elections and allow for ranked choice voting to decide who wins in a primary, with the top four, regardless of affiliation, advancing to the November general election. And Idaho's Republican Party leadership, well, they've been strongly opposed to it, saying it's too confusing for voters and it takes away their ability to elect conservative lawmakers. But to say Colorado has, quote, fallen to the left since the introduction of ranked choice voting in the state might be a bit of a stretch. Colorado doesn't use ranked choice voting statewide. 2 years ago, the Centennial State did make it easier for cities to use it should they choose, and some cities have been using it for a few years prior. But you know how many? 5. That'd be Basalt, Boulder, Broomfield, Carbondale, and Telluride. And according to the Colorado Sun and Colorado Public Radio, Basalt, with a population of about 4,000 people, has had the option to use ranked choice voting for several years, but only used it once in 2020 for a three-way mayoral race. Telluride, population about 2,600. They used it first in 2011. Carbondale has 6,500 people. They adopted ranked choice voting in 2002, but they have yet to use it in an election. Boulder and Broomfield, that'd be the 2 largest cities on this list. They've only adopted that option within the last 3 years, and both have only used it once, and that was last month. So what you're saying is Colorado has shifted to the left because some small mountain towns have occasionally used ranked choice voting, and some bigger cities have used it for one election cycle? Is Idaho's GOP trying to stretch a thin thread between Colorado and ranked choice voting and a Republican presidential candidate not being allowed on the ballot? Well, those are questions I asked Chairwoman Moon and got some clarification on this. She wrote back, her statement does not say ranked choice voting is the cause for Trump being taken off the ballot, but she said Colorado used to be a conservative red state, like Idaho, but recently it's become a liberal blue state with a liberal Supreme Court, which has led to the current predicament. Ranked choice voting is just one element of that shift from conservative to liberal, she wrote back. But when I reiterated, well, ranked choice voting has only been a thing recently in a handful of cities, and that 7 of the last 10 governors in Colorado have been Democratic, dating back to the 1950s, how can this shift be a recent one? Well, my email went unanswered, as did our standing request for an on-camera interview.